All right. Actually, I need these. So this is my wife's fault. Bless her heart. She's always trying to do the right thing. I have something on my phone here that she sent me from Mr. Mark Cranfield on Twitter. He posts things all the time on climate change and the politics of it and whatnot. Doing his best, I'm sure. But I'm a scientist, and so when I see people talking about this topic, I evaluate it for their discussion. I evaluate their discussion for factual correctness. I mean, what else would you expect me to do? That's my thing. So I just came in from doing some work outside, and you're cooling off a bit before I go back out, and I just thought I would address this post that she sent me. So it's pretty simple. I think that most people would understand this. So he starts out by saying, what is not driving climate change? So this is his negative list that he posted. These are things that are not driving climate change. And again, climate change is sort of a non-thing. I don't even know what that is. What is climate change? Please explain that to me, somebody. Go into the comments and see if you can explain that to me. What we're dealing with is global heating. Yes, that will create climate change. It will. But we have to deal with our cause and effect, okay? The cause is physics. You can measure it with a thermometer, right? With satellites from space, the whole thing. Climate change is an effect. Everyone's going to have to deal with that one way or the other. And your climate might change multiple times over multiple years or decades. But it's all global heating because that's the greenhouse effect. That's the thing we're enhancing with our carbon dioxide emissions from our burning fossil fuels. So, oh, she just showed up. So if I can finish this before she gets inside. So here's this list of things that are not contributing, my wife. Here's the things that are not contributing to climate change. Capitalism, consumerism, governments, banks, insurance companies, the fossil fuel industry, the public, the media, human population. What is driving climate change? 250 years of industrial civilization, greenhouse gases already in the atmosphere, snow, ice, albedo feedbacks, reductions in aerosols, ocean heat content, reduced ocean mixing, increasing stratification, etc. So that list of things is driving climate change. That is climate change. If your ice is melting, your snow is melting, then your climate is changing. This is a list of climate change. Okay, mostly ocean heat content, reduced ocean mixing. This is changes. These are changes in the system. And again, these changes are driven by something. They are effects, not causes. If these things happen, then your climate will change. But again, climate change is an effect. It's a thing that happens because of physics. And the physics is global heating caused by enhancements to the greenhouse effect, which is perfectly normal. But the enhancements are caused by us burning fossil fuels and releasing the CO2 into the atmosphere and not being able to do anything about that because we can't. So his list of things that are not causing climate change, capitalism, consumerism, governments, banks, these are all causing global heating. They're not causing climate change because nothing causes climate change except global heating. Capitalism doesn't cause climate change. What capitalism creates is global heating because capitalism can't happen without consumption of fossil fuels. Consumerism can't happen without the consumption of fossil fuels. Banking, insurance companies can't happen without the fossil fuel consumption. The fossil fuel industry wouldn't exist except that we all want fossil fuels to burn to get all these other things, all these other goodies, right? The flying and the driving and everything else. The public, the media, we are creating global heating. We're the ones doing that. It's not a natural phenomenon. We're doing that. We are absolutely doing that. We're the ones that are digging up the fossil fuels and consuming them. Now, I know the fossil fuel industry is doing that on our behalf, but they're doing it on our behalf. We want that. And we'd be really upset if they stopped doing that, or if they raised the price, or they made it difficult to get at the products like gas and the diesel. And then the human population. You know, if we didn't have 2,000 million, I know this is controversial, but if we didn't have 2,000 million people, I'm sorry, 8,000 million people. If we didn't have 8,000 million people, then the amount of fossil fuels we dig up and consume probably wouldn't matter. Now, at what level would it not matter? I don't know. 200 million humans? A pretty small number, right? If we had 100 million humans on Earth and they were digging up fossil fuels and setting them on fire, then it probably wouldn't matter much. Or maybe not, except maybe in a really long term, like thousands of years. But we're not. We are 8,000 million humans, and they're all burning fossil fuels because they all got to eat, and they all got to go places, and they all got to fly and drive and attend the COP and attend the IPCC and go to the UN, and all these people are doing all these things, and they can't survive without fossil fuels. So yeah, the population has something to do with it. So he introduces this list as the things that are not causing climate change. Again, climate change is not a thing. Climate change is not a thing. It's a no thing. It's nothing. Climate change is what you will notice happening in your environment, but it's the sum of all the things that are happening. And it's the melting of the ice, and it's the melting of the glaciers, and it's the rising of the sea level, and all these things will be summed up as, yeah, your climate is changing. It's getting colder, it's getting hotter, it's getting whatever, but it's all driven by physics. It's driven by physics. Physics is what's going to kill us. Physics is what's changing the climate. Physics is what's making the heat wave so bad. Physics is what's driving the tornadoes. Physics is what's driving the hurricanes and the droughts and the heat waves and the crop failure and everything else and the wet bulb temperature and all the things. It's all physics. It's all physics. And the physics is heat. It's all heat. The planet is heating up. It's heating up because we're modifying the greenhouse effect by adding more carbon dioxide. And we're doing that by consuming fossil fuels. That's what's happening. That's the cause of everything. That's the cause of everything that's in this list. Everything that's in this list is caused by burning fossil fuels. It's caused by burning fossil fuels. And the fossil fuels are not caused by the fossil fuel industry. They're doing that for us. They're digging them up, selling them to us. We're buying them. We'd be really upset if we couldn't buy them and we couldn't use them, and if the price was too high or the availability was too limited or anything else. If there was any perturbation in our access to fossil fuels, we'd have a fucking stroke. You'd have a stroke if you went to the market and the shelves were empty because the 18-wheelers didn't show up for a couple of nights in a row because they couldn't get diesel. And so they couldn't put food in the stores and put it on the shelves. You'd have a stroke. You'd have a stroke if you couldn't drive your 40 miles to work, or if it cost you, $10, $20 a gallon to fill up your car to go the 40 miles to work. You'd have an aneurysm if you couldn't get your fossil fuels. And if the fossil fuel industry came along and said, oh, yeah, fossil fuels, that's a bad thing. We're sorry that we're enabling that. We're sorry that we became the drug pusher, selling the heroin that everyone had to have. So we're just going to cut off the supply. We're bad. We did the bad thing, and we're going to cut off the supply. You'd have a stroke. You'd have a fucking aneurysm if they ever came along and said, yep, we're bad. We lied. We didn't tell the truth. We're just going to have to cut off the supply now. It's been 60, 70 years too long, and we thought everything would work out. We thought we'd run out of oil. We thought we'd just drill and sell all the oil, and it would run out. We'd all have a good laugh, and nothing would happen, because we all thought we had hundreds of years of being able to do this. We'd run out of oil before we made any changes in the climate. So somebody dropped the ball. Scientists, go blame the scientists. They were the ones who were telling us that we had 300 years. That's what I heard when I first heard about this in the 80s. We had 300 years before we had to start worrying about this. And the fossil fuel industry believed the same thing. So we'll just pump for 200 years, and at 200 and 250 years of pumping oil, hey, if we still have oil, I guess we'll stop, because that's what we thought we had going on, was 300 years before there would be any problems. Turned out it was 30 years. Who knew? Well, we didn't know. But you're going to blame the fossil fuel industry now for giving us what we want? If they didn't give us what we want at the price you're willing to pay and at the availability that suits your lifestyle choices, you'd have a fucking stroke. Yeah. You'd fall over dead if you couldn't get fossil fuels. If you went to the gas station to get your gas and it was $20 a gallon, well, you'd go in there and you'd beat that person up who's taking your money, swiping your credit card, even though it's not their fault. You'd go in there, you'd blame them, and then you'd have a stroke. $20 a gallon, or not available today, are not available this week, or you have to get in line and there's a coupon you have to get any because we're rationing now because of climate change and global heating. You'd have a stroke. They can never stop doing this. They can never stop doing this. All of them, the politicians, the capitalists, the consumerists, the governments, the banks, the insurance companies, the fossil fuel industry, they can never stop doing this. They can never stop doing this. They are absolutely doing this. And it's contributing to climate change. And this is all a list that's not contributing to climate change. Absolutely, it's contributing to climate change and global heating. Absolutely, foursquare, 100%. And no one wants to talk about that. No one wants to talk about, yeah, sure enough, we did it. And everything we thought was forever and eternal and sacred and godly, it turns out it was all just a big fucking mistake. And we just keep making the same mistake every day because now we're trapped. Now we're addicts. Now we can't stop. And it'd be nice if we could stop, but we can't. So there you go. We just keep doing the same thing. And the list of things that is driving climate change. Now, driving climate change, Mark Cranfield, you use that word, not me. These are all effects. They're not driving fuck all. I mean, they may be creating some feedbacks where it loops back on itself and makes things even worse, but that's not driving. Okay, what's driving this system, what's driving everything on this list is global heating. These are things that are driving climate change, whatever climate change is. I mean, good luck with that. Good luck finding a definition for that. Just find one that isn't 8 paragraphs long. 200 years of industrial civilization. Okay, maybe that is driving climate change. But behind 250 years of industrialized civilization is us. Us. We're there. We did that. There would not be 250 years of industrialized civilization if it weren't for us. Usins. We did that. And if you can't have your industrialized civilization, you know what you're going to do? You know what you're going to do? If someone ever comes along and says, yeah, industrialized civilization, that was, who knew that was a bad idea? Turns out that was a bad idea. Well, there you go. You learn something new every day. What if someone came along and said, yeah, industrialized civilization, we're going to stop that now? You know what you would do? You'd have an aneurysm. You'd have a stroke. And if you didn't have a stroke, you'd pull out your weapons and you'd storm the Capitol. What do you mean you're going to end industrialized civilization? What madness is this? What witchcraft is this? Yeah, so industrialized civilization is driving climate change because we want it. And what it's doing is it's creating global heating, not climate change. Consuming the fossil fuels is creating global heating, not climate change. And how are you going to survive without industrialized civilization? Just like how are you going to survive without diesel? How are you going to survive without 18-wheelers bringing food to your market? How are you going to survive without the internet and without, Amazon Prime? How are you going to survive without these things? You won't. Everything you own comes from China. How's it going to get here without container ships burning bunker oil? How's this going to happen? How is any of this stuff possible? And the rest of this on here, snow and ice, albedo feedbacks, these are all effects that loop back and make the situation work. They're called aggravating feedbacks. But the key to the word that here is feedback. They're feedbacks. They can cause things to happen, but they themselves are caused because they're feedbacks. Something makes these things happen. Something makes the ice melt. And then the changes in the albedo effect causes other things. But it started with ice melt. And what starts the ice melting? It's not the fossil fuel industry and it's not industrialized civilization as such. It's burning fossil fuels to enhance the greenhouse effect and make the planet hotter. That's what causes the ice melt. And then the ice melt feeds back. It's an aggravating feedback mechanism that makes that or even something else worse. Okay, so the loss in the ice albedo, the loss of the boreal forests, the impacts from global heating, these become feedbacks that makes things worse. The melting of the permafrost, the thawing of the methane clathrates, these are all effects of global heating. They're effects of global heating, and they do then cause other things. But they're feedbacks. They've already started. They are the kernel of change, and the kernel of change was kicked off by global heating. The permafrost melted. The ice melted. It didn't melt because ice melted. It melted because the planet got hot. And the planet got hot because of us. We did this. We wanted the fossil fuels. We burned the fossil fuels. For hundreds of years, we burned the fossil fuels. And we caused this. We caused all of this. And we did it. We did the thing through capitalism, consumerism, buying, flying, driving. We did it through increasing human population, feeding everyone with fossil fuels. That's how we did it. That was the impetus. That was the shiny thing that encouraged us to do this. And by the way, burning fossil fuels was really dangerous and deleterious, predatory for a lot of people. A lot of people died or suffered burning fossil fuels. Lots of people. And we just like, on the whole, it was working out. So those people are dead, but the dead don't complain. The dead don't have any problems. The dead don't come back and say, hey, I'm dead. What's wrong with you? They don't haunt you. There's no ghosts. I mean, go look at your horror stories. It's not about people who died of asthma coming back to haunt the living and remind them that the reason I died of asthma because is you drove 40 miles of diesel truck to go to work. The dead aren't going to come back from dying of asthma and haunt us because we were burning fossil fuels. It'll be some other reason the dead come back to haunt us, right? We didn't love them enough. That's what Hollywood's going to tell you. But lots of people are dying because of fossil fuels. And, but they don't have any problems now. The dead don't have a story. They don't have any complaints. They're dead. And the fossil fuel consumption, starting with the coal and the coal mines and the pollution from the coal, and then the acid rain and the asthma and all the heart attacks from, breathing coal dust. And then when the oil was burning, then we had all the soot and the carbon monoxide. And now later, of course, the CO2 is coming back to haunt us. We just keep doing this and doing this and doing this. And people keep dying from it. And we've known for hundreds of years that this was killing people. And, it kills coal miners every year. And it kills, people that work in the oil industry every year. They die of asthma. They die of cancer. And in developing nations that have refineries and coal mines and everything else where they have no environmental regulations and no worker protections, those people die on the job. They just die on the job. And all the chemical plants all around the world that process all these derivative chemicals from crude oil, benzene, toluene, and everything else, all these cancer-causing things, all these birth defect-causing things. The people that work in these industries, they die all the time too. And it's all backed up by our consumption of fossil fuels. We did this. And we've known for centuries that this stuff is harmful. We've known for centuries this stuff is harmful. And we just didn't give a shit. Nobody gave a shit. The only time you're going to give a shit, the only time anybody's going to give a shit. Easy prediction. The only time anybody gave a shit was when the price went up on the derivative products, starting with gasoline or diesel. When the price went up, where the availability stumbled and faltered and you had to get in line. You had to get in line for 5 fucking minutes. When the price stumbled or you had to get in line, then people bitched and complained. People had a stroke because they cared about availability more than anything else. They didn't care about the pollution that was killing people or giving children asthma or lung disease. No one cared about that, and they don't care to this day, and they never will care. They never will care because the dead tell no tales. And even the people who lose, their loved ones to cancer and chronic heart disease and, pulmonary diseases, caused up by consumption of fossil fuels and exposure to caustic chemicals around plants. Even the people who lose these people, once they bury them and get over the loss, they jump right in their car and they go drive off because they never understood that their own behaviors is what caused their loved ones to die. And even while their loved ones were still alive, their behavior was what caused their own death. They contributed to that. And we don't care. We just don't care. We're never going to give this up. We're never going to give this up. We can't possibly give this up. And, I know Mark Cranfield is trying to say something useful here. That capitalism isn't causing climate change, or, nothing's causing climate change. Climate change is not a thing, okay? It's the sum of a bunch of changes. But by itself, it's not a thing. You can't measure it with an instrument. What was the climate yesterday? What is it today? What is it going to be tomorrow? There is no instrument for doing that. What you can measure is the heat. And ultimately, capitalism, consumerism, governments, banks, insurance companies, money, jobs, growth, bickering, progress. These are the things that are causing climate change. All these things. And it's all his list that's not causing them. And his last thing on the list, things not causing climate change, is human population. The fuck it isn't. 8,000 million people, we have to feed those people with fossil fuels. That's where the food comes from. Huge farms with massive tractors and all this diesel and all the food being transported across the ocean, transported across the state, transported on the freeways and transported on the trains and loaded into the supermarkets and loaded on the shelves, and the employees coming from scores of miles in all direction, and all the refrigeration and all the waste and all the packaging and all the product manufacturing and all the processing and watering the cows with water that travels 1,000 miles, and everything else that has to happen. All that is fossil fuels. All of it, 100% of it. And that's how we feed 8,000 million humans, with fossil fuels. That's how you do it. There's no other way to do it. Everything on this list: capitalism, consumerism, governments, banks, insurance companies, human population, the media, the public. That's all the things causing global heating. All of it. Everything on that list is causing global heating. Mark Cranfield, what the fuck is wrong with you? Don't you understand what you're saying? And then everything on your thing that these are the things driving climate change. These are the things people don't even understand. Snow, ice, albedo feedbacks. What the fuck is wrong with you? Consumerism is driving all this. Getting in your car, driving to Disneyland, getting in an airplane, going to Disneyland 4 times a year, going to Minnesota to see your relatives. All that is causing global heating. Yes, of course, it's melting the ice, it's changing the albedo, but the albedo changes are not driving climate change. They are symptoms of something. They are the end product of all of this. And this is us. We are doing this. We are burning fossil fuels. Nowhere on his list of things driving climate change, his word, not mine, is consumption of fossil fuels. Consumption of fossil fuels isn't even on here. Consumption of fossil fuels isn't even on his list for the things driving climate change. Do you see what's happening? Do you see what people do? He basically says the fossil fuel industry in his first list is not causing climate change. So he's saying it's okay to burn fossil fuels. Fuck me. I got things to do. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We are so screwed. We are so screwed. We are so screwed.